We will eat for enjoyment and for the pleasure of it without bearing any of the human penalties that we now bear. But I want to remind you that program doesn't start till you get to heaven, so I want you to understand that, right?
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, Signs, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Under the previous administration, the United States lost nearly 250,000 manufacturing jobs. You remember that? They let other countries raid our factories, steal our jobs, and rob us blind. Other than that, they were very nice. They allowed China to freely loot our economy, plunder our intellectual property, and target our industries for destruction. That's what was happening. China.
Let me ask you about China.
China. President Xi is a friend of mine, a great guy, but he's for China. I'm for the USA. I'm for the USA. China. I love China.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Bryan Fischer.
Welcome to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us this Thursday, May 9th, 2019. We have about 10 years left until the world ends. According to Beto O'Rourke, he said that a couple weeks ago. The world is going to flood because the polar ice caps are melting. That's what the Democrats think. The world's going to end in 10 years. But hey, we're going to have some good Focal Point shows between now and then, according to the Democrats. Welcome to Focal Point, American Family Radio. My name is Walker Wildmon, and I'm sitting in for Bryan Fischer. Bryan's out traveling today on behalf of American Family Association, so we'll have a packed hour. I got so many stories, I don't think I'm going to get to them, but that's what Bryan does, right? He brings in too many stories, and he can't get to them all. But we're going to have a good time today on the show. We have Rob here with us and Jeff in the saddle here, and we'll have a read report in a little while, which you'll find very, very interesting as we do each day on Focal Point. You can keep up with the show on our website, afr.net, afr.net. I know the big tech giants, Jeff, have been trying to censor Bryan. Is he still in Facebook jail?
He's out. He's out on
parole.
Not on good behavior, but he's out.
So you can currently access Bryan's Facebook page. I believe he's still in Twitter jail. So, but the best thing to do, as I've said, is just go to our website, afr.net, and then on our website you can visit Bryan's podcast page. Just type in Focal Point podcast page at afr.net. A lot of good content there, and you can read Bryan's articles on our website, afa.net. So we have afr.net, which is our radio ministry, and then AFA, American Family Association, afa.net. Bryan writes at least once or twice a week on our blog site, afa.net, the Stand blog site. So you can read Bryan's articles there, and I'm sure he shares those on social media. So a lot of ways to keep up with the show. Thank you for tuning in to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Another event, an event that American Family Association and American Family Radio is sponsoring, is the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up in June of this year. It'll be in Tupelo, Mississippi, which is the home of our headquarters here in Tupelo, Mississippi. June 20th through 22nd at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi is the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference put on by Urban Family Communications, Urban Family Talk, which is a ministry of American Family Radio. But it is sponsored in large part by American Family Association. So if you would like more information and to register, you can visit urbanfamilytalk.com, urbanfamilytalk.com. That's all one word, urbanfamilytalk.com. And you can register there, find out more information. We'll have speakers like Bishop E.W. Jackson. Your own Abraham Hamilton III will be there. Miki Addison, of Urban Family Talk will be there. So we'll have a lot of great speakers covering very, very deep and biblical content and information. So great conference. I would highly encourage it. Marriage, Family, and Life Conference, June 20th through 22nd. UrbanFamilyTalk.com to find out more information there. We're going to talk about a couple of different things today. You know, I'm not going to spend the whole show talking about the Russia hoax. I'm getting bored with that topic. It's old. We already know the answer to all the questions, so we're not going to belabor the point, but I'm going to spend a few minutes on it, which translates in my language to about the whole segment on the topic. Yeah. But the reason I want to bring this up, because I want to prove to you not to believe the talking points of the Democrats and even some Republicans, that we just need to find out a little more information about this Russia hoax, and then we'll end the investigation, and then we'll stop talking about it. That is absolutely not true. And one example of this, I want to play clip 4 here. This is a Democrat representative out of California, and he's talking about, if we can just get Robert Mueller before our committee, then we'll close down this whole investigation. Let's listen.
What I want to see is Bob Mueller to testify, to tell his story, and then let the American people make a decision. I think that's what's most important.
Do you think Bob Mueller shows up next Wednesday? That was the rumored date. Do you think that happens?
I think he should. I really think that's what's going to help bring closure to this. The Justice Department has said he can testify. We want him to testify. I think, frankly, he has more credibility than any of us in Congress, anyone in the media. The country wants to hear from Bob Mueller. Let's hear from him.
Oh, is that right? Bob, you heard that. That's on the record. California Democrat representative. I'll pull his name up in a little bit after the next break. But this Democrat representative is on Neil Cavuto's show there on Fox Business or Fox News, and he says, you know, if we can just get Robert Mueller before the committee, then that will bring closure to this entire topic. Who are you kidding? That's not going to close down this topic, you liar. They are lying to our face. That will not close down this topic. It will only rehash and relive this entire discussion. And then you also heard him there said, look, Robert Mueller is a man of impeccable integrity. We all trust him. Oh, really? Oh, really? Well, his 448-page report said that Donald Trump did no wrong. Do you trust him? Do you trust him? So I don't believe it one bit. The Democrats can't let this thing go. They're obsessed with it. They will not move on from it. And this is why President Trump, it's important here, folks, that he is exerting executive privilege. He is exerting executive privilege, and I support him 150%. Why, Walker? Because President Trump, the last 2.5 years, has cooperated with this entire Russia hoax, this Fantasyland investigation, over 1 million documents, hundreds of interviews, thousands of hours of testimony, and here we are. Here we are. They can't let it go. They can't let it go. So don't believe the Democrats when they say, we just need one more witness, and then we'll close this thing down. Who are we kidding? We'll be in 2028. They'll still be talking about Donald Trump colluding with the Russians. Speaking of that, and then we're going to move on, is the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is actually headed up by Republicans, subpoenaed Donald Trump Jr. See, this is what I'm talking about. They subpoenaed Donald Trump Jr. like this week. After he's already appeared before the committee for hours. He said, I'll answer all your questions. I'll stay here as long as you want. He's already done that. What are they doing? They're subpoenaing. This is Senator Richard Burr out of North Carolina. Subpoenaing, trying to force Donald Trump Jr. to come testify. Again, big fat waste of time, big fat waste of taxpayer dollars. And on the positive side, basically every Republican senator other than Burr are saying this is completely unnecessary. Let's shut down this fake hoax investigation once and for all. So this past week, I'm going to play a clip 1 here. This is going to be Brit Hume, of Fox News contributor. But earlier this week, I believe it was maybe on Monday, or it could have been over the weekend, the New York Times published President Trump's tax returns from decades ago. It's like a 9-year span of tax returns from like 84 to 95 or something like that. But they published the tax returns as this big bombshell story. Donald Trump was once broke. He was in debt, X amount of dollars, $1 billion or whatever. And, you know, when you read the headline, you're like, oh, goodness, man, they got dirt on Trump. But you actually read the article, there's nothing new there. And the one who makes that point is Britt Hume of Fox News. Clip 1, let's listen.
You know, he wrote a famous book, The Art of the Deal, but he also wrote a book called The Art of the Comeback, in which he describes what dire straits he was in, and the reviews of it at the time said what he said, that he was billions in debt. The Times, I think, said that he was $1 billion in debt. So he has either bragged, if that's the right word. I think at the time that he was writing about his comeback, he wanted to magnify, as he does nearly everything, the size of the debt he was in. So the idea that he was in debt and had, you know, gone belly up on a bunch of his real estate enterprises is hardly new.
That's right. That's exactly right. This is not news, folks. Donald Trump, decades ago, wrote a book about how he went broke. I mean, he wrote a book about his debt and how he made a comeback. And he actually bragged about how he used the bankruptcy laws to actually benefit his company. And this happens all the time. I mean it, literally all the time. These multi-million, multi-billion-dollar companies, they carelessly go into bankruptcy only to get out of it with less debt. That's how it works, because these judges just magically make debt disappear with the stroke of a pen with the ruling. And so it's not uncommon for millionaires to use bankruptcy laws, to use, losses to their benefit, to their personal benefit. This stuff happens all the time. I'm not excusing it, saying this is like good behavior or something. I'm just telling you, for a New York real estate man, this is not uncommon. This is not uncommon. And at the end of the day, my point here is, and this is a question we have to ask ourselves when we see these headlines, what difference does it make? What difference does it make? So what? So let's just say President Trump was $1 billion in debt 20 years ago. What does that matter? What does that matter? What happened 20, 30 years ago? Does that mean that we should not vote for President Trump? That we should not support him? That's the conclusion that the left-wing media wants us to come to, is that somehow Donald Trump shouldn't be in the White House because of his failed business dealings from 30 to 40 years ago. And so the whole New York Times tax return stories is really a non-story. And this is dangerous that the left now is using the IRS as a political tool. And that's what they're doing. I don't know how these tax returns were released. It was definitely illegal, no doubt about that. But see, the thing is that the left wants, and we saw this with the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. They were going after conservative groups under Obama's watch, and guess who went to jail for that? Nobody. Guess who had to answer questions for that? Nobody. And speaking about being held in contempt of Congress, which is what they're trying to accuse Attorney General Barr of, they're trying to subpoena Donald Trump Jr. What about Lois Lerner? She's over the IRS, and she comes in and says, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm pleading the fifth, and I'm heading to the House. Now, what's she done? She's retired. She's living on the government's retirement, and she headed up the campaign to target conservative groups using the IRS, and she didn't have to answer a single question. That's who should be held in contempt of Congress. Moving on here, in California, the state legislature in California is trying to pass a law that would change the rules of engagement, if you will, or the necessary force when it comes to police officers and using deadly force. Well, what are the changes they're going to make? Well, essentially, the California legislature, they're trying to make it to where in order for an officer to use deadly force, there has to be extraordinary circumstances, if you will. Put it this way, this legislation is aimed at undermining law enforcement. It is aimed at making it harder for police officers to defend themselves. Why? Because instead of using the term proper force, they're changing the language to necessary, which is what Monday morning quarterbacking does. When you're in the heat of a situation or an altercation, you don't have time to start weighing out whether in court this is going to be held up as necessary and this and that. So what this is going to do is it's going to make officers hesitate in using force to stop deadly criminals, violent criminals. What happens? More police officers shot, killed in the line of duty. That's what California is heading towards. Focal Point, American Family Radio. We'll be back with more stories after the break.
A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The Migration Policy Institute conducted a study that found 98,000 illegal aliens graduate from high school in America annually. MPI last studied this issue in 2003. Then, only about 60,000 illegal aliens graduated from high school annually. That's nearly a 44% increase over that time period. The states with the largest number of illegal alien graduates were California, Texas, and Florida. The top 15 graduating states account for about 81% of all graduates. A nation without borders is no nation at all. The United States welcomes all legal immigrants. Illegal immigration, however, must be stopped.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. This past Saturday, Southern Evangelical Seminary held its 2019 graduation ceremonies here in Charlotte. We graduated a wonderful class of dedicated men and women who have utilized the resources provided by SES to hone and refine their God-given talents to now go forth and serve the Lord Jesus and His church. We were particularly excited to have 2 PhD graduates and 4 Doctor of Ministry grads, as well as our master's and bachelor's grads. We also took the occasion to honor our co-founder, Dr. Norman Geisler, upon his retirement from teaching at the age of 86. Our SES board voted unanimously to award Dr. Geisler the honorary title of President Emeritus. The citation read, Dr. Norman L. Geisler has rendered dedicated, meritorious, and invaluable service to Southern Evangelical Seminary since its founding in 1992. Dr. Geisler has served Southern Evangelical Seminary with great distinction as co-founder, as inaugural dean, as SES's second president, and as distinguished senior professor of theology and apologetics during 3 decades of faithful service for Christ and His kingdom. In recognition of this unique record of invaluable ministry, Southern Evangelical Seminary's Board of Trustees is honored and delighted to unanimously award Dr. Norman L. Geisler the honorary title of President Emeritus. Dr. Geisler, quite simply, has been the preeminent Christian apologist of the past half-century. If they ever constructed a Christian apologist Mount Rushmore, they would unquestionably start with Dr. Geisler's visage. So SES's Board of Trustees also voted unanimously to rename our graduate school as the Norman L. Geisler Graduate School of Apologetics as an appropriate and fitting way to honor Dr. Geisler's invaluable legacy. We're so grateful that God placed Dr. Geisler among us, and we are dedicated to perpetuating his ministry into the future. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Bryan Fischer on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Before we jump back into the news, and I actually have a clip I want to play from California, a police chief out there talking about their horrible legislation coming through the legislature there. I want to read out of Romans 8, and right here Paul is talking about having life through the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and not having life in the flesh. This is chapter 8 of Romans, verse 1 through 8. A little lengthy, but I'm going to read it. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. For what the law was powerless to do because it was weakened by the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh to be a sin offering. And so he condemned the flesh in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us, who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. The last 3 verses here, verse 5 through 8 in chapter 8 of Romans. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. Last two verses. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. So what we can take there from Paul's writing is that we need to have our minds set on the Spirit and not set on the things of the flesh. And that takes daily discipline, daily prayer, and daily submission to God's authority and to the Holy Spirit. I want to play clip. Oh, this is clip 3. Yeah, appreciate it, Rob. This is clip 3. This is a police chief from Newman, California, and he's talking about the real-life consequences should this dangerous legislation that I talked about earlier become law. Let's listen.
Ron knew he was the protector between good and evil. That evil can only thrive when good men and women do nothing. And the policies that are coming from across the street are making it more difficult for us to do things.
Well, there you have it. And I know the audio there is a little difficult, but what he's saying, he's giving a speech at a funeral of an officer that was slain in the line of duty by a illegal immigrant there about a month or two ago. Officer Singh was his name. He was actually he was an immigrant into the United States, a legal immigrant who became a police officer there in Newman, California. And the police chief there is having to speak at the funeral of the officer. And he says there that the people across the street, which he's talking about the state capitol, because he's giving this speech at the funeral in Sacramento, California, and he says the folks across the street are making our job more dangerous and harder to do, talking about the state legislature. And he's also hinting at the law that they're trying to pass here. But this legislation in California, folks, if we have any doubt about what side the Democrats are when it comes to law enforcement or criminals, this legislation only helps the criminals when it comes to slaying or hurting our officers in the line of duty. And you know, we thought officers already have a tough job with this whole social justice movement where everybody's a victim and the criminals do no wrong and the police officers are to blame for everything. This whole movement, which is dangerous, is causing officers to think twice about their reactions. And thinking twice is not always a bad thing, but when you got a guy pointing a gun at you, you don't need to think twice. You don't need to think twice. You need to react. And in some cases, officers are not pulling their firearms. Why? Because they're afraid of what the people on the nightly news are going to say about their actions. Focal Point American Family Radio is the show. Walker Wildmon here, sitting in for Bryan Fischer. And Jeff Reed, I knew Reed was somewhere in there. I want you to bring in the Reed Report. You had a very interesting story today.
Yeah, it's taking a look into the privacy. Everybody's hearing about that from the big tech companies now. They're all touting that they're very interested in privacy. And what we found, at least out of the top 3, Apple, Facebook, and Google, they have different definitions of what they mean their privacy is. And then as you look further into it, you find out those definitions aren't really what they mean.
Right.
So for Apple, basically, they're more primarily focused on your personal privacy of your personal data between you and your device, which they're kind of known for. The Mac system Apple system has been more secure of Windows, and they do a lot of encryption on their iPhones and stuff, so they're considered safe.
And to your point, Jeff, remember, we'll read these news stories every few months about how the police are having trouble getting into an iPhone.
Yes.
Which proves the point of Apple that their devices are actually pretty secure.
It shows you that they can do it.
Sure.
Where it gets a little fuzzier, though, is because a lot of people using the Apple operating system will back up their devices on the cloud.
Right, which it immediately becomes unsecure there.
Yeah, well, it's much different there. They do share with police departments and things like that. So And kind of a disturbing trend is they're kind of moving more into a revenue-based data collection, which would put them in the same category as Facebook. And
Sure.
they used to make most of their money from selling hardware, but they're
Right.
realizing that it's all about the cheese. Everybody wants to make money.
And not to defend big tech here, but when you have access to millions, in Apple's case, I don't know, maybe billions of users' information, and you expect those companies not to capitalize financially on that user data?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all about the bottom line, making money. They're going to capitalize on it, right or wrong.
Sure. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And that brings us into Facebook, because Facebook's kind of known for that. Facebook privacy basically means they're limiting who can see what you post and send. And they're trying to encourage people to do more type of group events and community type events instead of posting on Facebook on your regular wall.
Sure.
That way it'll ensure more privacy, and they're trying to do more encryption with their Facebook Messenger. What's the other ones that they have? Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram.
Yes.
Are all
Yeah, that's
connected. So they're trying that, but see, here's the problem. Facebook is touting their privacy as privacy from other users,
Right.
where most people are concerned about privacy from Facebook.
Exactly. The
That's
person
the
who hosts
problem.
the data. Yeah, that's interesting, because you're right that, just seeing the word privacy, that could mean a plethora of things.
Yeah.
And the different companies you're saying define it different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
now Google has done pretty good as far as trying to emphasize privacy as an option that you can invoke. Basically, you can go to your settings and opt out of a lot of things. The
Sure.
problem is they don't let a lot of people know about that.
Right.
And a lot of people don't bother to do it.
Mhm.
But the real problem with Google is they still are retaining massive amounts of information and data.
Right.
Which is a big concern for people that are concerned about a growing government and government intrusion.
And we were golfing the other day, Jeff, and you were telling me how you read a lengthy story about how Google basically has an avatar for
Yeah.
every user. I mean, they create this little profile for every user.
Sure. People are concerned about their phones, and they should be. There is locations and all kinds of information that Google will gather from your phones, but they say it's unnecessary to really market you or approach you. They know everything about you already because they call it a voodoo avatar. It's basically a collection of a virtual person in there with all the information. They collect every like, every web page, every
Right.
location. So they basically have a virtual image of you in there already.
You know what's creepy, Jeff? And I'm trying to figure this out. I'm investigating it now, but I'm being a jokester here about me investigating it to the extent that I can do some searches on Google's website, try to figure it out. But I'm starting to see some television ads that sure do look like some things I've searched on the internet recently. For example, my wife and I just got, and I'm not endorsing the system or the company, but we just got SimpliSafe home security. Well, which is a self-install system. Well, I'm seeing SimpliSafe television ads like every day now.
Yeah.
There's a way that they can do that, right?
Oh, they do. They do. They track everything. Basically, the summarize the takeaway from this is, even though these companies, the big tech companies, are superficially saying they're very concerned about privacy and they're making changes, yeah, they are. But as long as you're under their total control of their platform, they'll give you little privacy kind of giveaways.
Yeah.
As long as you're under their total control.
Hey guys, I've got a question. I know Jeff and I both do a lot of searching online for videos to pull clips out for our shows.
Sure.
Google has gotten bad.
You cannot find conservative videos until you go down several levels.
Yeah, you have to go to page 10. It used to be you could say you wanted something from Fox.
Yeah.
You could type in the topic and then put Fox News, and it would bring it up, but not anymore.
Yeah,
they're definitely got some controls on
Sure.
your searches. And it tends to, the way I'm seeing it, it tends to lead us away from conservative Christian values.
You know, and the one thing that I really don't, I wish somebody would do this, one of these big companies is, you know, there are these technologies that add convenience to our lives. I mean, Jeff and I were talking about how they have this technology where you can cut the lights off in your house, you can close the garage remotely, you can unlock the front door for your neighbor remotely, maybe for them to put the mail in your house. I mean, you got all these conveniences, which I think everybody pretty much likes if they can afford it. But there's always that exception.
Yes.
Where in order to get the convenience, you got to give up your data. Yeah. And then the company now knows what time you come home, what time you go to bed, what television shows you watch. I mean, it gets creepy, honestly, and it's convenient, but it's creepy. I just wish there were some companies out there that provided the convenience and then didn't store all your data. Maybe that'll happen.
That would sell.
It would sell.
Yeah.
I would buy it.
Yeah, for sure.
If I could have convenience.
Well, these iPhones and stuff where you go, "Hey Siri," and they answer you. You know, that's sort of scary. Like, "Hey Siri, what's the weather conditions?" And now it doesn't want to work.
It's not listening to you. It knew that you were talking about her, and then she said, "I'm not going to answer, Rob."
But you know, it's just that's a little creepy.
It is.
They know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
What the weather's doing. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm beating a dead horse now.
Yeah, so we gotta pick whether we gotta want convenience or our privacy, and it seems like there's not a middle ground. But we'll keep an eye on that. I want to move on to one more topic, and then the next after the break we'll take your calls, and before the end of this segment I'll try to give out the number. President Trump is considering, I believe this Friday, tomorrow, levying about $200 billion in tariffs, $200 billion more in tariffs on China if they're not willing to reach a deal on these trade agreements. This is clip 2 talking about China, President Trump. Let's listen.
Under the previous administration, the United States lost nearly 250,000 manufacturing jobs. You remember that? They let other countries raid our factories, steal our jobs, and rob us blind. Other than that, they were very nice. They allowed China to freely loot our economy, plunder our intellectual property, and target our industries for destruction. That's what was happening. And look, President Xi is a friend of mine, great guy, but he's for China. I'm for the USA. I'm for the USA.
Well, there's President Trump, you know, doing his classic speaking engagements there. And President Trump's right. China's been taking advantage of the United States for years, for decades. Nobody's been doing anything about it for the most part. And then, you know, and I bring that up to say that I don't really want to hear these economists and all these people complain about the tariffs and our cereal's going to go up 3 cents and all this. Now, in reality, are President Trump's tariffs going to cause some U.S. products to go up? Sure, I'll admit that. Probably so. You know, I don't know all the specifics, but yeah, the end result of raising tariffs is the Chinese government's going to raise, or the companies are going to raise the price to supplement for all the cost of the tariffs. But here's the thing. President Trump is doing these hard things and levying tariffs, these politically hard things. Why? Because he wants our country to be better off in the long term. That's the goal of the tariffs and these trade negotiations. Let me tell you this. I'll guarantee you, you will not get the Chinese government to the negotiating table in good faith unless you play hardball. Unless you play hardball. That's how these countries work. That's how these companies work. They don't come to the table unless they have something at stake. They have something at stake. So this whole idea that President Trump could stop levying tariffs and play Mr. Nice Guy and say, hey, Chinese government, will you please come negotiate with us on trade? They're not going to do it. They're not going to come to the table unless you threaten them, punish them, or do something to incentivize them coming to the table. That's what President Trump's doing, and kudos to President Trump. I'll pay 10 extra cents for cereal or whatever if it means in the future our future generations, our kids and grandchildren, have a better country to grow up in. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Walker Wildmon sitting in for Bryan Fischer. We'll be back after the break to take your calls. Here's the number, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We'll talk about anything we've discussed on the show today, and we'll answer your questions and your concerns. Focal Point, we'll be back in a few minutes.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I was finishing undergrad and got credit cards because I couldn't work full-time, so that started the credit card journey for me.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
And then when I got married, we combined our credit card debt, and it became impossible to pay off on our own. At that point, I was like, I don't know where to turn. And then I found Trinity.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
I initially was scared to call, and immediately I felt relief. I mean, in a matter of 3 years, we've already paid down $20,000 in credit card debt, which is huge.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
Hey, Target. You thought we were done? Did you think we would give up? Well, of course not. We still stand strong with our belief that men do not belong in the women's restrooms or changing areas. It's absurd. We should not have to walk in your restrooms with the fear of someone of the opposite sex walking in on us. Together, we will stop this open door policy. Help us by signing the pledge to boycott Target at afa.net.
Today's culture is opting for entertainment rather than biblical enlightenment. For those who resist that trend, Friends of Israel shows listeners why loving the Jewish people and supporting Israel is important to the Christian faith. Friends of Israel shares biblical truth about Israel and the Messiah and promotes solidarity with the Jewish people.
This is Chris Katolka of the Friends of Israel Today radio program, heard each weekend on this station, and here's what's happening in Israel.
Friends of Israel, Saturday afternoon at 2, here on American Family Radio.
I've been an advocate for biblically responsible investing for many, many years, 30 years, because I'm an advocate for permanent income. This is Dan Celia from Financial Issues. I remember having two sisters that had trust funds that I managed. They were family trust. They were the third generation. They were in their 80s. They had more money than you could shake a stick at. They didn't want for anything. And even them, at one point in time, said to me, do we have enough income to pay our bills, our electric bill? That's all they cared about. I'm telling you, you're going to get to that point. So it's not an investment. It's a gift. It's permanent income.
Find out about charitable gift annuities when you call 800-326-4543, extension 345. 800-326-4543, extension 345. Or by visiting afafoundation.net.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Bryan Fischer.
Welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us. Bryan Fischer will be back in the captain's chair on Monday. Until then, you have myself, and then tomorrow, I believe, Fred Jackson will be hosting. At least that's what I heard. Fred came by my office. So you have me today, and then Fred Jackson tomorrow. Glad to have you with us on the show. We're taking your calls, 888-589-8840. You know, this whole situation with North Korea, I don't know how this is going to turn out. You got North Korea now firing missiles again, test firing missiles. You know, President Trump levied, historic sanctions against North Korea, put tremendous pressure on North Korea. And, this might just prove that this guy's rogue, this dictator in North Korea, he's rogue. Nobody can control him. And who knows, we may need military intervention there. I don't know. But something to keep an eye on there in North Korea. Another thing I'm seeing here, I'm reading the news story on Politico here. President Trump said, the former ambassador, now the national security advisor for President Trump, is John Bolton. I'm a huge fan of John Bolton. His policies on national security are largely spot on. He's tough. He doesn't put up with any nonsense. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. And President Trump said today that he tempers Bolton's hawkish instincts. President Trump said, basically, I hold John Bolton back from doing some of the things he wants to do. So I think that's kind of funny because, most of us view President Trump as being Mr. Tough Guy, Mr. I don't put up with any kind of misconduct or whatever. But President Trump said today that he has to keep John Bolton reined in. Kind of funny there, a little sense of humor from President Trump. Focal Point American Family Radio. We're going to take your calls. The number one more time is 888-589-8840. We're going to go to Lester in Texas. Lester, welcome to Focal Point.
Thank you, Walker. I appreciate you taking my call, sir.
Glad to have you on. What's on your mind?
Okay, a little bit ago, you were talking about our privacy on these cell phones and so forth. For years now, I have been on a Android / Windows telephone, and I use Google Maps, M-A-P-S, a lot in my work. And I'm wondering if I switched to Apple, would I still be able to use the Google applications?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. And here's how, Lester. From my understanding, and I'm no expert on all these apps and all this, just from my experience, you can download the Google Maps application on an iPhone. If you go to the App Store on an iPhone, you can download the Google Maps app on your iPhone. So yes, you can still use Google Maps on the iPhone. That's my understanding. So hope that helps answer your question. And was anything else on your mind, Lester?
No, sir. That's it. You've done well. Thank you for your information.
All right. Appreciate it, Lester from Texas there. 888-589-8840 is the number to call in and share your thoughts, share your concerns. David in Ohio. We'll go to David in Ohio. Welcome to the show. Hey, David, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I went through a dead spot.
That's all right. You're on Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, first of all, thanks for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener.
Excellent.
On the topic of the privacy issues with the Alexa apps and such, I have a little bit of a funny story. My son had gotten my wife and I one for Christmas. We were sitting around the TV one day, and there was a commercial for one of those stand-up bathtubs that came across on TV, and I just looked over at my wife nonchalantly and said, hey, honey, this is, that's something that we need. And it was, in all seriousness, it was about a day and a half later, we ended up getting a sales call from the same company that I had commented on.
No way, David.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I got a phone call from the same from a sales guy for the same company that I commented on their commercial, and it kind of put me in mind because I was looking at Facebook, and there was a really nice meme that came out where it kind of depicted, the days of the days gone by to today's technology, and back in the 60s and 70s. It showed a lady that said, I have to be careful what I say because the government might be listening on my telephone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then right below it says, and today it says, hey, government, send me a recipe for shortbread.
Yeah, David.
That's all I wanted to share with you guys. I thought it was pretty funny that you guys were talking about that.
Yeah.
And it just,
everybody's got their own story about that privacy issue, David. Appreciate the call in to American Family Radio. We're going to go to Midland, Texas, talk to Brian. Brian, welcome to Focal Point.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Brian, we're doing well. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just wondering, we've heard about the Bob Mueller report for, 2.5 years now. And it seems like even though it's been released, like I believe you said, it's not any better than what it was from day one. And, what's the impeachment trial or hearings? Are they really being pushed that much? And can that report really start impeachment trials on Donald Trump?
Well, that's a good question, Brian, and I think the answer to that question is there is no case for impeachment. There's been no high crime and misdemeanor while President Trump is in office. So, in my opinion, this is just a big sideshow. It's a big smokescreen. It's meant to delay and obstruct and punish Donald Trump for winning the presidency and for beating Hillary Clinton, all with the goal of delaying this thing until 2020, where Democrats can take back control and continue their corruption. That's my opinion of what this whole thing is, the Mueller investigation. So appreciate you calling in there. And it's a big waste of time, big waste of taxpayer dollars. All this stuff, if anything, we can say that Robert Mueller spent his $35 million with his 20 attorneys and did all the homework for us, got all the answers, got all the questions answered, and we're done. We're done. We know all we need to know. We've been hearing about this thing for 2.5 years. Everybody's tired of it. You even ask Democrat voters, and they're tired of it. You ask them what it rates on a, when you have a list of top 10 issues for voters, even Democrats, the Russia investigation's like number 10. Democrat voters do not care about this Russian hoax. It's all a big farce. Donnie in Kentucky. Donnie, welcome to Focal Point.
Yes, sir. I just had a question about Congress is looking for President Trump to release his tax records, and that seems to be what they're hung up on now. But none of the congressmen want to release their information on funds that they paid for sexual harassment or sexual misconduct.
Boom. Donnie just got it out of Kentucky. Home run out of the park. Donnie, you're exactly right. The Democrats, they and the Republicans, they've had this for the last since the Clinton administration. They've had this hush fund. Millions of dollars have been paid out to accusers for sexual harassment, for racism, discrimination, all these accusations. Money's been paid out to keep these accusers quiet, and both Democrats and Republicans colluded to keep those records private so nobody could see. So very interesting point, and maybe one day we'll see those records, but I think the swamp doesn't want to let that get out, both Democrats and Republicans. 888-589-8840. Look, if you've got a question for Focal Point, now's the time to call in. I've already been through 5 or 6 calls. We still got 8 minutes left in the show, so now's the time to call in and ask your questions. We'll go to Gail in Tennessee. Gail, welcome to Focal Point.
Thank you. I appreciate AFR very, very much. I have 3 areas with regard to privacy. Number one, anytime during the last administration that I would call either my representative or my senator, within 12 to 36 hours, I would get a call from the IRS. The second thing, I was texting one of our children about a year ago, and I put in quotation marks something that President Trump, and I followed it with his name, will often say, which was, we'll see what happens. It took 4 attempts to get that through on my old flip phone, track phone. And the third area, I used to be on the Internet. I came off the Internet when I was watching PBS, the Downton Abbey series, and it came up on my screen one day. How did you enjoy Downton Abbey? So I've decided, there's somebody always listening, so we better be real careful what we say. But I do appreciate your program, all of your programs, from 4 in the morning until, bedtime at 7. So thank you guys for all the work you do.
All right.
You are really wonderful. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gail. God bless you. Appreciate the call in with your story there. Hey, Rob, what's up?
She said they're always listening. There's a lot of truth. And I was sitting in my office, and one of our coworkers' name is Sherry, and she walked by and said, "Good morning, Sherry." And my Siri and on my phone thought it said Siri and said, "Good morning. How may I help you?" I'm going, that's scary right there.
Which means the microphone has to be on at all times.
That's right.
Listening for the key words.
Yeah. Now, the reason Siri didn't work a while ago is I have it on silent, and I'm sure it didn't chime in because I'm on silent.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've always wondered, if those commands that you give to Siri or any other assistant, if those are stored somewhere, if those audio files are stored somewhere, who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure they are somewhere.
Yeah.
Somehow.
We'll go to George in Missouri. George, welcome to Focal Point.
Hey, how you doing there, Walker?
Doing well.
All right. Yeah, the reason why, well, you guys know, everybody's been on this merry-go-round. The reason why they want to shut down Bill Barr, the Attorney General, is because they don't want him going after the previous Obama administration for what they've been doing the whole time. They're afraid of getting busted. and like for the IRS gal, Lois Lerner, and Obama and Hillary, they don't want to get busted because all their criminal activity and all the lying, stealing, cheating that they did, and we're not supposed to go after the real crooks. That's what they're afraid of.
That's exactly right, George. That's why they're, like you said, that's why they're so afraid of Barr. They started out not afraid of Barr. They treating him as Mr. Nice Guy. Everybody likes Barr. He served under Bush. But now that Attorney General Barr is putting his foot down and going after this stuff, all of a sudden they think he's the devil. That's a very good point, George. And hopefully this whole thing will boomerang. That's what I want. I want to see this whole thing boomerang, and I want to see people locked up. I'll be honest with you. I'm not even shy about it. I want to see those who broke the law under Obama's watch put in jail or face some kind of fines or penalties. I mean, we gotta start punishing illegal activity by our government. Why? Because if we don't, this stuff's gonna happen again. This whole Russia hoax will happen. We'll have a Russian hoax 2.0 in the future if we don't get this stuff under control. And as I've said over and over again, you and I don't get to break the law and get away with it. Those in Washington, D.C. shouldn't be able to break the law and get away with it. I'm going to go to Sean in New Orleans. Sean, welcome to Focal Point. You got about a minute.
Thank you. Google, I'm telling all the listeners, Google St. Malachi prophecy. Francis accepts every religion, one world worship. He accepts gays, trans, and marriage of each and worship. And put it like this, he wants to have a one world religion and all good united. He says that Jesus Christ died in vain in Christmas, and that all religions smile, and it's just not a good thing. The end is nearer than people think. It's here.
Hey, Sean, I missed the first part of this. Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? I missed the first part of who we're talking about here.
Saint Malachi, M-A-L-A-C-H-Y, prophecy. He's an ordained saint from Ireland, the first ordained saint from Ireland. And he named this Pope, Pope Francis, as Peter the Roman, 112, the last Pope. He is the false prophet.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call, Sean. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Glad to have you folks with us today. Glad to take several calls, get your comments on the show. We love our listeners. AFR.net is the website. Focal Point is the radio show. And stay tuned for more great content, all from a biblical perspective, unashamedly.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast, may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Secular progressives in the United States have worked to alter the very nature of our republic.
For the progressives, there are no longer any God-given natural rights.
AFA Executive Vice President Ed Vitagliano helps you understand the progressive threat to the American Republic. Get your copy of this powerful DVD from the AFA Cultural Institute at afastore.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler says President Trump's assertion of executive privilege over Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report is a clear escalation of his administration's blanket defiance of Congress. Nadler spoke ahead of a committee vote to hold Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress for not turning over a full, unredacted version of the Mueller report.
If Congress is not entitled to the full